Hello, good night. Come on in, come on in. You know what time it is? It is Thursday night, and you are with me for another installment of The Best Investment. Come on in, come on in. Welcome, welcome. So glad to have you all joining me tonight. This is a very special series that I am doing for the month of February. So if this is your first time joining me, thank you so much for coming on and joining. For those of you who joined me for the first time, my name is Mona-Lee Belizaire. I am a personal growth strategist and a speaker, and I specialize with helping young adult women move from where they are to where they want to be. So thank you so much for joining me. Make sure that if you have the opportunity and would like to, please share this with someone. You can press the arrow button that's on the right hand side in the corner. Thank you so much, Danielle, for you and Hunter tuned in tonight. So yes, as I was saying, so press the arrow button that's on the right hand side lower corner. You will see it. Just press it. Share this with someone. We're going to be diving into some great information tonight. Before we get started, if you have not visited my website or you don't know much about me, please do Mona-Lee-Belizaire.com. You will find out more information about my program direction. You'll also find out about the topics that I can speak on as well. I would love to work with you and or your organization. So thank you all so much for coming in. So I am someone that likes to just dive right in. So tonight we are starting a new series for the month of February. I am starting a new series for the month of February, and it's called Matters of the Heart. So matters of the heart are really issues that affect us in our hearts and our minds and our emotions, right? Most of us know the scripture that says, out of the heart flows the issues of life, and out of the heart the mouth speaks. So majority of the time, whatever is going on inside of our hearts, whatever is going on inside of us, it will automatically flow out of us. There's nothing that's in that does not come out, right? And we can also think about that in the natural as well too, right? That's why our digestive system, whatever we put in, comes right back out, right? Okay. So we want to talk about matters of the heart and how those affect us, our walk with God, how it affects us just as individuals. So the first topic we're going to talk about tonight is pride. And I really sort of toyed with what I was going to start with. So for the next 2 weeks, we're going to also talk about jealousy. And the last week, we're going to talk about offense. So the spirit of offense. And I wanted to start with pride because, it is, I must say, it's a very, very tricky thing, right? Because a lot of us grow up and we talk about self-confidence, and we talk about obviously having confidence in ourselves, having confidence in who we are, being proud of our accomplishments, where we come from, those types of things. But there really hasn't been anything, or I wouldn't say anything, let me not say that. A lot of us don't really understand what pride is or even what pride looks like, right? So I want to talk about that first. And before I even get into that, I just want to make a little, just some, not disclaimers, but just give you all just a good foundation before we get started. So there's absolutely nothing wrong, right, with having confidence, and there's nothing wrong with you being proud. One of the things I think about is my nationality. Most, if not everybody know, I'm a Jamaican. I'm a very proud Jamaican. It's very evident, right? But it gets to be a challenge in that setting or in that space when I am someone that feels like Jamaicans are better than everybody else, or Jamaicans are better than Bajans, or they're better than Bahamians, right? That's where that goes over into pride, right? Because pride is really making yourself better than you really are. The scripture even talks about that. Like, if you act like you're better than you're better than you really are, and you're really nothing, then you're walking in deceit. So that's when pride starts to set in, and I start to feel like I'm better than somebody else. I am better than the next person. I'm better than whoever is around me, right? That's when when those types of things, right, feeling proud about something sort of shifts over into this deceitful sense of pride. Another example that I think of when there's sort of some disconnect between confidence and being prideful or having that horrible sense of pride is when I think about my own life story, right? So I got pregnant when I was in my junior year of college, And, by God's grace, I made it out. Went, got my degrees, everything, graduated. I have a really great son, which I'm grateful for. But one of the things that I can honestly say is that it would be very prideful of me if I did not give credit, right, to God for helping me, to sustain me, also to give credit to those who are in my community, those who have helped me, those who are in my church, my family, my friends, those who supported me, right? So I want to make that distinction, because sometimes we walk in this, we don't have a good understanding of what pride is. And so we walk in a false sense of humility. And I'll talk about that I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I just want to make that clear. It is good to have confidence in yourself. You should feel good about yourself. You should feel good about your accomplishments. You should feel good about what's going on in your life. You should be happy. You should have joy. But you want to make sure that it's not going over into pride. So I want to get into that a little bit right now about what exactly pride is. So pride is taking credit, right? I call it private credit, or not acknowledging others for the part that they have played in who you are and what you have done. So, for example, I mentioned to you that it certainly wasn't my doing, as the fact that I was able to, to be successful and to accomplish what I was able to accomplish. Why? Because somebody had to watch the kid. I used to drop him off with my church with my church family, with my church friends, with my friends all the time. Sometimes I didn't even really know where he was, depending on which one of our college friends had him or where he was dropped off at some point, right? But he was under the care of somebody at some point. I had my family support. I had my faith. And so it would be very prideful of me if I did not acknowledge the individuals, acknowledge God for what he did to carry me through that season. Pride also looks like not apologizing when you know that you should. So I am very guilty of that, especially in, I'd say for those of us who have been in relationships, are married, or even friendships, right? Not even, they don't have to be intimate relationships in that sense. It could just be relationships, or just in general. That you have done something wrong to someone and you refuse to apologize to that person. That is exactly what pride looks like. And you did something wrong. So a lot of times, we'll be like, we said something we weren't supposed to say. And then what happens? We sort of let it just brush over. We don't really say, I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for what I did. We let pride set in. And if we're not careful, pride can also lead to bitterness, and it can also lead to resentment. So that's another way that pride shows up. Another way that pride shows up is making situations about you, right? So everything is about me. I don't know if you've talked to somebody before, but like you'll call them and you share with them a problem or something, and they'll be like, girl, that's what happened to me. Or girl, can I tell you the time when? Or that's why I don't. And you're like, how did you happen to make this about you? Like, I called to talk to you about me, and all of a sudden you're making this about you, right? So that's how pride can set in sometimes, when you make a situation or something about yourself. Now, don't get me wrong. It's good for people to provide examples of what happened to them, how they have made it through, provide examples, give you advice. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm sure you all may have all experienced at some point in time when there's somebody, you call them about something and they want to talk about themselves, or you call them about an issue and they want to give you all the examples that they have gone through, but not really dealing with you as a person and what you are going through. So that's what pride looks like as well. Pride also looks like wanting to be recognized. So you do stuff only to be recognized, right? I've heard of people who give, and when they give to the homeless, they give to a charity, and they blast it all over social media, or they blast it to everybody. I gave $1,000, or I gave my last dime, or, I gave this to charity, right? And giving is, we're supposed to give, right? But if we don't give with the right heart, if we're not cheerful in our giving, if we're not careful in how we give, and it's not to exploit other people, because that is really exploitation, then that's when pride begins to set in. We want to be seen doing these great things. We want to be seen doing these good things. And that's the only reward that we can end up getting, is when that's it. You don't get any other reward. All you get is that recognition of the fact that you did something. to help somebody, and that's it. So we want to be careful of how pride can set in that way. Pride can also look like not celebrating others, right? So if I'm not being recognized, then I'm not recognizing anybody else as well. Some of us may know people like that. They're so self-conceited, they're so into themselves, and all they can think about is, how can I be recognized? I'm not going to be celebrating anybody since nobody's celebrating me. I'm not celebrating anybody. That's where pride can set in. And, one of the things about the matters of the heart, I believe, is a lot of them, they're all connected. And I believe the foundation of a lot of it is pride. Foundation of a lot of it is selfishness, right? Because pride spills over into bitterness. Pride spills over into resentment. Pride spills over into jealousy. And so if we're not careful, that's why pride is such a tricky thing, because it really sneaks up on you. And nobody goes out, nobody sets out and say, oh, I'm just going to be the prideful person. You're like, hey, I'm prideful. No, it's something that really sneaks up on you. So you have to be very careful about when you're doing anything, what your intentions are. Sometimes even for me, and I try to do this as often as I can, if there is no reason for me to share things with anybody about what I have done, I try not to share it, right? Until I know that I'm supposed to. I'm always trying to check my motives and my posture. Why am I doing this? Am I doing this out of the kindness of my heart? Am I doing this because I'm led to do this? Or am I doing this because I want somebody to see that I'm doing this great thing, right? So we just always have to be careful when we decide to do something. Pride also looks like, obviously, wanting to impress people. So we talked a little bit about that just now. You want to look good. You want to impress people. You want to show people, that you have it all and you can do it, right? Pride also looks like only thinking of yourself. So you're not thinking about anybody else. You're not thinking about what's going on in anybody else's world. You're all about self, self, self. And like I said earlier, there's nothing wrong with being confident. There's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself. Those things are important. God calls us to do those things. But we just have to be careful when it spills over to being overly consumed by yourself, that you're not thinking about anything else. Pride also looks like not asking for help. Now, I know that may be tough for some of us, especially some of us ladies who are of the independent nature, right? And I use that term loosely, so don't come for me now. Just walk with me. So many of us, right, we were raised to be self-sufficient, to be able to do, even if we were raised with fathers and raised with brothers. My father raised me a particular type of way. He raised me, even when I go on dates, to have what we Jamaicans call vex money. So if in the event, and I do think it's all right, if in the event I need to get up and leave from my date, I have my vex money. I have my money. If I vex with the date, I can leave. Raised to have, to be able to fend for ourselves, to be able to do. And there is nothing wrong with having a healthy dose of that. But sometimes if we're not careful, we don't ask people for help at all. We want to do everything for ourselves. Or even if somebody does it and they don't do it to our specifications, what do? We do it over. We don't ask for help, right? Some of us, we just want to do it by ourselves. There's just something in us, that pride that makes us feel like we have to do it by ourselves. And we're not made to do things by ourselves, right? Because God created community. That's why, Georgia says she still have a lot of ex money, right? So, and you also said earlier that you don't appreciate the term self-made, right? Yeah, because that's not rooted in community. That's not rooted in making sure that I have people that are giving me advice, that are helping me. I'm going it alone. And one of the things that I always that I even notice for myself is that pride can spill over into offense, right? And when you have the spirit of offense, or when you're walking in offense, nobody can tell you anything, because you feel like you're right. You feel like you know it all. You challenge everything that has been said, and that's rooted in the spirit of pride. And lastly, pride, as I'd mentioned earlier, is thinking that you are better than others, right? So there are a lot of people who are they feel very high and mighty. They're very haughty. They don't associate with a certain type of people, and they let it known. And this is different from, obviously, we all function and flow in different sects, in different areas of our lives. So we don't always necessarily gravitate towards certain people. But there are some people that are just like, they see a homeless person, they screw up their face. they see somebody that's in a lesser position than them, and they don't want to talk to them. They don't associate with a certain type of people, right? So that is a spirit of pride that's built up in that person. If there is another any other way that pride shows up that you know of, or even pride shows up for you, please drop it in the chat. I would love to know about that. I think I covered majority of them, but like I said, pride is a very tricky thing, right? It's very tricky. It sneaks up on you. Like sometimes you're having conversations with people, you're doing something, and then all of a sudden pride just comes up and you're like, that don't even sound like me. That don't even look like me. That don't even is something that I would do. So let me know if the spirit of pride shows up for you differently, or if it's something that you've seen in somebody else that you're like, that might have been pride. Okay, so why is pride so bad, right? Outside of the obvious things that we know, right? Why is pride such a bad thing? First of all, pride causes us to neglect the need of God, the need for God in our life, the need for community, right? Because we feel like we can do it on our own. There's some of us, even if we're not careful, we don't even pray and ask God for some things because we're so prideful. And on a regular day, we probably wouldn't think that, we can't ask God for anything because he's our father. But at the end of the day, pride can sit in and we don't even ask God for some things because we don't want to ask him for anything. We don't want to ask for help at all. Pride also causes us to fall. And so if we're not careful, there's a scripture that says pride comes before fall, pride comes before destruction, depending on the version that you're looking at. So before there is some kind of destruction, before there is some kind of fall of somebody, there is always some type of pride that takes place. If you look in the news, right, and you see anybody that has been in charge of like a big corporation and a conglomerate, and there has been some type of scandal that broke out, some type of fall that happens to the person, you can always be sure that there was some type of pride. That person probably felt like, I can get away with this. I can do whatever I want to do. I am CEO. Hear me roar. And then what happened? Then came the fall. And so if we're not careful, there's always some type of this pride that happens before the fall. And so you can look all the time, even you can look in the Bible, you can just look in our natural world. Whenever there's someone that falls, and they fall hard too, there's always some type of issue with pride that comes before that. So how can we overcome pride, or how can we work to make sure that we don't carry the spirit of pride as much? Because like I said, it is a tricky thing. It's something that you have to work on all the time, because sometimes we don't recognize that we're operating in a spirit of pride, or we're carrying pride. So one of the first things that I think is important is gratitude. I've really come to understand and know that gratitude is such a major key for a lot of things in our lives. Even just recently, I realized that gratitude is a major key for any type of increase or abundance. Because if we're not grateful for what we have, then we're not going to be able to get anything more. And so we have to be grateful, right? So one of the things that that's a major key when it comes to not walking in pride or even walking in humility is to have a heart of gratitude. What does gratitude do for us, right? It recognizes that we are not our own. We're not responsible for what we have. We didn't get what we have on our own. Most times, everything that we have, not most times, everything that we have, right, comes from God. Everything that we have comes from somebody having given it to us in some way, shape, or form. So when we cultivate a heart of gratitude, it ensures that we're not walking in the spirit of pride. Because as I mentioned earlier, when pride sets in, it neglects our need for other people. It neglects the fact that we are grateful for what other people have done for us. Another way to walk out, to overcome pride, is we recognize, as I mentioned earlier, what we have is not our own, but we also give credit where credit is due. So we give credit to our Father, our Heavenly Father. We give credit to those who have given things unto us. We give credit to those who help us. We say thank you when people help us. We ask for help because we recognize that we need community. We recognize that we need each other, right? Because even sometimes I'm very guilty of it, and I have had to learn over the years that I need to ask for help. And I'm not even talking about big help in big areas, or large endeavors in my life. I'm talking about even the small things that I know that I'm not capable of doing it, or I know somebody can do it better than me, but because I don't want to ask for help for whatever reason, I just want to know that I can do it myself, right? Or because I know I'm capable, I do it. But if there's somebody that's able to do it better than I can, then I need to relinquish that responsibility. Because what happens if I'm not careful, then that same pride can set up that, can fester into resentment. If we think about the scripture, and I think this is applicable here, of Mary and Martha. Mary, Martha, the reason why Martha was all over the place and doing what she had no business doing is because Martha was prideful. And then she had the nerve to say to Jesus, why are you not talking to my sister? Because, I'm over here cleaning and helping out, and she's not doing anything. And Jesus was like, I'm paraphrasing here, but he was like, I didn't tell you to do all of that. Your sister chose the better part because she's sitting with what's most important right now. I didn't tell you to go clean. I didn't tell you to go cook. Who told you I needed all of that, right? But then she did that, and she didn't do it out of the kindness of her heart, obviously. And what happens? Pride set in. So Martha went and she started complaining, right? So we have to be careful, and we want to make sure that we're giving credit where credit is due. We have to practice humility daily. Daily. Everybody say it with me. Daily, right? It is a daily practice that you have to really put on humility. And humility, by definition, is the freedom from pride and arrogance. Can you imagine that? The freedom from pride and arrogance. That's the literal definition of humility. So what does it look like to be humble? Some of us don't know how to be humble, or some of us have a false sense of humility, and that is possible. So I'll start with a false sense of humility. So a false sense of humility looks like someone not talking about anything good that has happened to them, or anything that's going on in their life, or anything that they have done, right? Because they feel like if I say something, then I'm not being humble. If I talk about what's going on, anything good, then I'm not being humble. No, that is a false sense of humility. Humility looks like I am speaking about what is going on in my life, but I'm ensuring that when I'm talking about it, it's not coming from a place of bragging, and I am recognizing that I did not accomplish this myself. So most times you hear people say, I was able to do this by the grace of God. I was able to do this by faith, because they recognize, or I was able to do this because of the help of my family and my friends. I'm so grateful that I had enough strength to be able to do this, because they recognize that this is not my own doing. And a lot of times, if we're not careful, we also confuse, we also get a over sense, or a heavy sense of meekness. And then it causes us to shy away from our true gifts, our true passions, even who God has called us to be, because we want to sort of, crumble and take a lower stature. And let me say this. There's a difference between taking a lower stature, understanding that God has the higher stature. You're taking a lower stature than you not walking in your kingdom authority, or you not walking as a child of God. Because we're called to be bold. We're called to be to walking our kingdom authority. We're called, actually, our mandate is a mandate of dominion. Right? So the first thing that God told us to do was to have dominion, to have rulership. And if you're going to have dominion and you're going to have rulership, that means you're in a leadership position, right? So that means by nature, you are stepping to the forefront. People who don't, or have a false sense of humility, they pull themselves back, and they're in a place that doesn't allow them to really show the light and the love of God and the things that God is doing. So they hide everything, right? So that's where we have to be careful between what humility is and a false sense of humility. And so I think I covered everything tonight, and I hope it was good information. So I just want to do a recap really quickly. If there is something, first of all, that resonates with you, please drop it in the chat. I would love to hear what stood out for you. I would love to see your comments. Don't leave me out here hanging by myself, because sometimes I am talking to the screen, but I want to know I'm talking to somebody here. Okay, so tonight we talked about matters of the heart, and the first topic that we talked about tonight is pride. So I went into a little bit about what pride is and what pride isn't. And really, at the helm of pride is self. That's it. It's self, but it's an arrogant form of self. It's a self that makes someone feel like they can do anything by themselves. They don't need anybody, right? That's what pride really is. We also talked about pride. Pride can also, when pride sets in, it leads to other matters of the heart as well. I believe that pride and selfishness is the foundation of a lot of the reasons why we struggle with jealousy, why we struggle with envy, why we struggle with offense. Some of us are easily offended. Some of us, nobody cannot tell us anything. We're not teachable, right? Like, nobody can talk to you about anything. You're just always right. That stems from a spirit of pride. Then I walked into how we can overcome pride. So I talked about overcoming pride with gratitude, recognizing that what we have is not our own, that literally literally God is giving us these things, and what do you call it? It's a lease. We're just called to be good stewards over what we have. And we recognize that because of God's grace, because of God's love, because of our community, we are able to have what we have. We're able to accomplish what we can accomplish. And finally, we talked about practicing humility daily and the difference between false humility and actual humility. And humility is recognizing that I have a dependency on someone that's higher than me. I have a dependency on God. I have not a dependency on community, but I recognize that I need community in order to move forward, in order to function in life. And humility understands that humility is a posture of the heart, right? So it's something that you have to cultivate. It's not something that you get up one day and you're just like, I am humble. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to practice humility. And so I suggest you all practice humility daily. Gratitude is a great place to start in order to be humble. When somebody does something, when something happens, you say, thank you, God. You say, thank you to the person, right? You recognize that, listen, I'm in a space where I can't do this on my own. I'm in a space where I need help. I'm in a space where I need people. And so you give credit where credit is due. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. I pray that this message, this information was fruitful in some way, that you learned something, that you can take something. One of the things that I'm practicing now is whenever I read something or whenever I hear something, I try to take one thing from it, because we're overloaded with information every day. If you work, you get information at work. If you're in a household with a lot of people, you're getting information there. You talk to friends, family, you're getting information. We're getting information from all different places. And so it's important for us to filter the information, take what we need, right? Where they say, eat the meat, spit out the bones, something like that. But you take the information that you need. So, think about what we have discussed tonight. Think about what I have talked about. And if there is something that resonated with you, take that one thing and put it into practice. Take one of the things that I mentioned to overcome pride and put it into practice this week. Just decide to be grateful. Just decide just to have a heart of gratitude, right? For everything. Everything you see. Like one day, really quickly, I just decided to do, it wasn't really like an inventory, but I just sat and I looked around and I was like, Lord, thank you for my pillow, because there are a lot of people that don't have a pillow to lay their heads on in the night. That means they probably don't even have a bed, or they don't even have a place to stay. One of the things that gets me every time, and I tell people all the time, I think I probably said it before on my live, I live in Maryland, so it's cold during the winter time. When I can turn on the heat, I think I'm the most grateful person when I can turn on the heat, because in my travels, I see homeless people that are not able, they don't have a place to stay to get heat, or the shelters are packed, during the winter time of everybody trying to be, or some of them, they'll try to go down south where it's a little bit warmer and then they'll come back up. So imagine having to leave your place to go someplace warm when I'm in a place where I don't have to leave my home to be warm. So sometimes we just have to cultivate a heart of gratitude. And then when you cultivate that heart of gratitude, it will humble you. Oh, it will humble you. It really will. And so, just start to do that. Let that be the one thing that you do this week, that you begin to create a heart of gratitude. You cultivate a heart of gratitude, and that you're ensuring that whatever goes on, whatever happens, that you still are grateful for what you have and grateful for what's taking place in your life, because gratitude does lead to humility, and it's a great way to overcome the spirit of pride. Thank you all so much for joining me. If you're just coming on, thank you for coming on. Make sure you go back and watch the replay, comment, share it with folks. I would love to hear from you and love to hear what you have to say. Make sure that you come back again next week for another installment of The Best Investment. Next week, we're going to still be on the Matters of the Heart series. We're going to be talking about jealousy, right? And a lot of times, most of us probably feel like, oh, I'm not really jealous of anybody. But you'd be surprised at how jealousy can surface sometimes. So it's not to say that we're walking in perfection, because we all have these things. And I think it's good when these things pop up, because it helps us to recognize what are in the deep recesses of our heart, and we can tackle it right head on as soon as it comes out. So thank you all so much again for joining me. Have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a great weekend. And I'll see you again next week for The Best Investments. And before I forget, check out my website, Mona-Lee-Belizaire.com. Again, thank you so much. And remember, you are the best investment. Take care. Bye.